Well, welcome everybody. As we continue our journey into what is referred to as macroeconomics, we definitely need to talk about something that is of great importance to you. It is referred to as unemployment. It is the state of not being employed. Now, often you might have heard someone, mainly your economics teacher, tell you you should get a job, get a job, get a job. Well, we have to understand there's a difference in actual economics about how people are considered employed or unemployed. So, if you're not aware of this, the federal government is a massive entity, and within that massive entity is there's something called the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And what they attempt to do using statistics is to determine who exactly is unemployed. But the most important thing for you to understand is they take the US population, they divide into three groups. Number one, anybody under 16 or institutionalized. For example, my uncle's a ward of the state of California. He has been institutionalized his entire life. A second group is people who are not actually in the labor force, meaning if you're a stay at home parent, a full time student like yourselves, or anybody who's retired, they are not considered part of the labor force. So the third group of people is the actually only people we care about. They are the actual labor force. They are people who are not in group one or group two, and they're willing to work and they're able to work. So the unemployment rate itself is the percentage of only the labor force that is unemployed. So, for example, when you find a job, let's say at Cinemark during the summer, and then you quit to come back to Fossil, you are not considered unemployed because you're not considered part of the labor force. Another oddity is that, say, for example, you graduate MIT with a degree in electrical engineering. You're working 60 hours a week for 10 years. You're making, let's say, $400,000 a year. You lose your job. You are considered unemployed. Let's say the next day you get a job working at Starbucks 2 hours a week. Well, in this point, you're now considered not unemployed, even though we can pretty clearly your life has not gotten any better. So, anybody who's in the labor force and it only works part time is still considered fully employed. Now, what does that mean? That means that the unemployment rate is not really talking about everybody in America. It's only talking about a small segment of America. And more importantly, you have to be willing to work and or able to work to be considered unemployed. So that helps me get a better understanding of the unemployment rate in categories of unemployment. So here we go. Number one, economists refer to something called frictional unemployment. These are workers who are either searching for a job and they have the right skills, or they've already been offered to take a job. They're just kicking back for a moment. Now, what I mean to say is simply this: if that is the case, and see if my smartboard will work here, and here we go, I am somebody who is searching for a job with the right skills or waiting to take a job. That tells me that, you know what? This is a good thing. If I could spell it correctly. This is a good thing. At the same time, if I'm a worker who was once demanded by employers, but my skills have become outdated, but I'm not concerned because I'm just going to go re-educate myself. The economy has moved on. This means this is also a good thing. Thirdly, we have something called seasonal unemployment. Many times, macroeconomists don't even consider seasonal unemployment at all in categories of unemployment. But moral of the story is, we do not want Christmas or Easter to go on forever. So it goes without saying that when that time period is over, those workers are now available to work on other jobs. So seasonal unemployment is a good thing. So you heard me say the big epiphany here. Unemployment is good. At the same time, however, unemployment can be bad. Cyclical unemployment, related to the business cycle and the recessionary phase, is a worker who has the right skills. They're willing to work. They're able to work. It's just there's no jobs out there. That is what a recession is. So macroeconomists, three good types of unemployment, and then one bad type of unemployment, which tells me if there's good unemployment and it's good that people don't work, what exactly is full employment? Well, generally speaking, they say about 95% of the labor force working is a healthy economy. That means 5% of the labor force not currently working, that means they are unemployed, is also a healthy economy. That is referred to as the natural rate of unemployment. Historically, it's about 5-ish percent. But most importantly, you need to understand that in capitalism, people aren't working, and it's a sign that it's a healthy economy. So here's some examples of some types of unemployment. Let's just go through it together really quick. Person A cannot find work as a mall Santa in January. Clearly, that's seasonal unemployment. That's a good thing. Person A leaves their job to become a stay at home parent. You guys ready? This person is not unemployed because this person is not even considered part of the labor force. So we have an American. They're not part of the labor force. They're not employed. Are we to consider that a parent staying at home to raise a child is a bad thing? Well, clearly not. And the data then goes on to say further that most children who do have such a parent, especially in the earlier years, tend to benefit from it greatly. So in reality, it's a good thing. Number three, person A is laid off work when the economy experiences a recession. That's cyclical unemployment. That is bad. Person A dropped out of their GED program and have difficulty finding work. Well, this is the argument. GED program is what you can get instead of a high school diploma, is that high school provides necessary skills for you to be employed. I actually disagree with that. I say there's a job out there for everybody. Some jobs require certain skills. Most jobs require just somebody who has a good work ethic, good people skills, and they learn on their job. But don't tell your other teachers I said that. Person A is just a phenom. They can perhaps quote pi to 15 digits. And fortunately, we don't need them anymore. We have a TI 89. So that person is, I don't know what they're good for, other than it's a good party trick, but they are structurally unemployed. I have no doubt they're going to reacquire some new skills. Person, see number six, person A leaves their job as a professional call of dutier, not coder, professional call of dutier to look for work in the fast food industry. Can this person get a job? Well, I'm going to say yes, they can. They're frictionally unemployed. They have the right skills. Fast food industry, what do you need to be able to do? Flip a hamburger, clean a bathroom, take some money? This person can do it. Person seven graduates from college and begins looking for a job. Since this is a bit vague because I don't know what their degree is, I'm going to argue that, they're frictionally unemployed. I'm sure they have some sort of a hard work ethic they developed in college, I hope. Person A has difficult finding a job as a lifeguard after Labor Day. That's because the pools closed down in Colorado, so that person is seasonally unemployed. Person, let's see, number nine. Person A likes to sleep on the couch all day at their parents' house and play video games at night. Person A has not turned in a job application in 12 years. Well, person A, that sounds like perhaps somebody I know. More importantly, are they unemployed? And the answer is no, because they're not considered part of the labor force. Remember, you must be willing and able. And number 10, person A cannot find work in the typewriter repair industry because almost everybody uses computers these days. That is generally true. And actually, curiosity enough, typewriters have become kind of like a decoration, especially older ones. They just look really good like an antique. So, unemployment. Number one, you got to be part of the labor force. Number two, some of it's bad, some of it's very good. Number three, in all seriousness, if everybody was working, that implies probably slavery exists and or life is so bad. So one more time, a healthy economy, people are unemployed, but certain types of people and only a certain percentage of them. So let's go on to the other issue. So we discussed unemployment associated with recession. Sometimes when the economy gains too much momentum, we experience something called inflation. So here we go. Number one, I often hear that inflation is just the increase in the price level. The price level is not every good or service. It's just overwhelmingly a majority of goods and services that typically people like you and I buy on a day to day basis. We measure this by looking at what is referred to as the Consumer Price Index, which tries to track all of this by looking at a typical basket of typical goods bought by the typical consumer. It needs to be updated every now and then. Your last 3 years have seen atrocious inflation rates. And what it does, it makes your money worth less, not more. The reality is that's a terrible definition of inflation. And rather, the real definition, according to certain macroeconomists, is not a rise in the level of prices, but rather an increase in the supply of money. And that will have the effect of raising the prices. So, one thing I wanted to point out to you, even though you and I always remember correlation is not necessarily causation, I would like to point out how high the inflation rate was during this time period, and this time period, and this time period, and this time period, and this time period. And all those time periods are associated with military intervention by the United States of America. That's my best guess. While initially, at the onset, Declaration of Independence, Constitution, most of the people involved at levels of government wanted to keep America as an isolationist country, to not involve itself in foreign affairs militarily. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess that's an opinion for you, that has changed. And America itself is always seeming to get itself involved in military interactions abroad, especially in context of what happened within Israel recently, China, and Taiwan. More importantly, what happened with Iran literally last night. So, all you need to know is before you start beating the drums of war, you can assume that prices will begin to go up as the military and the United States government must compete for resources that are bought by the typical consumer. And I don't think that's a good thing. I also don't think that's a good thing because my real income will go down, meaning what my money actually buys becomes worth less, not more. Who is bummed? Well, anybody who's saving money, they're saving something that's losing value. Make sure you understand that. Typically, older people live on a fixed income. That is definitely a detriment to older people with a rising price level, as they are hoping to not have to go back to work. Who is happy? Well, anybody who borrows money now has the ability to pay back money that is worth less than what they borrowed. Moral of the story: the number one borrower in America is the federal government, in which case the federal government does like inflation, even though your money becomes worth less. People who are wise and financially savvy don't particularly care because they have what are called cost of living adjustments, and they are flexible income receivers, which means their salaries or wages tend to track and move according to the inflation rate itself. So, in summary, a recession, we start to see cyclical unemployment creep in, and that's not good. And expansion at some point becomes inflationary, and your money becomes worth less. That's not good. And sometimes they both occur. That's called stagflation, and that's currently what we're living in potentially. No one knows for sure. Hopefully, that will give you enough information for you to understand that I do expect you to be able to take notes off of this. There's an assignment on Google Classroom, which is notes about unemployment and inflation. Very nicely done. Have a great day.